Hey everybody, Blake T. Wild here, and welcome back to The Ultimate Era! It's the thing I'm doing, where I'm covering all of the original Ultimate Marvel comics from the original universe. And here I am, back at a long-time fan favorite here on the channel, Ultimate Spider-Man. It's not just my subscribers who love this series, I love it as well. It's fantastic. Can you believe, though, that it has been almost 8 years since I made my first video on Ultimate Spider-Man? This video series is lasting almost as long as the actual Ultimate Spider-Man comic series. But speaking of comics that take several years to release, the Custodians Agents of Cross. This 6-issue comic series asks the all-important question: what would happen if the only heroes that can save the world are an intelligent baboon, the world's smartest man with the power of elasticity only in his right arm, a teenage girl who controls fire, and a 4-armed werewolf? Find out now, because issue 3 is releasing weekly over on my Patreon, with issues 1 and 2 having been uploaded there in their entirety. Each book of this 6-issue series is going to be over 50 pages. The last issue is closer to 70. Only $15 for these books. Far better deal than anything you'll get from Marvel or DC these days. And if you're in the Phoenix area, I will be attending Arizona Comic Arts Festival on March 22nd at the Phoenix Shrine Auditorium. Check it out. It's a one-day show, gonna be really great. They've had some great big-name guests in the past. This year they got Kevin Eastman, and that is going to be the first place that you'll be able to buy the physical copy of the Custodians Agents of Cross issue 3, which sees our heroes, the Custodians, as they travel to the Rallian Institute for Accelerated Learning to meet the most fantastic supergroup in training, the Infinitum Brood. It also features 2 backup stories: Let's Get Happy, in which the Neuronaut must mentally battle the villainous Gray Matter, and The Bench That Wouldn't Stop. An evil city councilman summons a demonic bench that eats people. Released in 2005, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Mark Bagley. This is Ultimate Spider-Man Hobgoblin. The book begins 9 months ago. 9 months? The gestation period of a human? That's all the longer that Peter Parker has been Spider-Man? Everything that we've seen of him has happened in only 9 months? They made a fucking movie and released it in 9 months? Get the fuck out of here. If you're watching these videos on my channel, and you have been for a while, you'll know that I have a chronology laid out of the Ultimate Marvel Universe in a way that I think makes sense. Sure, it's headcanon, but what isn't these days? But is it possible that in this insane comic book alternate reality, everything we've seen in these past 70-plus issues occurred in 9 months? Uncle Ben dies, Peter gets spider powers, Green Goblin stuff, Dr. Ock stuff, Kraven stuff, Venom stuff, Gwen Stacy gets abandoned and then dies. What else has happened? Carnage comes around. Carnage, what else happened? He hangs out with the Fantastic Four, kinda. He hangs out with Johnny Storm, Wolverine, the X-Men, everything. They move houses in this one. Could all of that have happened in 9 months? Sure. Would have been a hectic 9 months. Very stressful 9 months. Oh yeah, all the Kingpin stuff. I forgot about all that. Yeah, it could have happened. But it so greatly diminishes the story and the growth of not only Peter Parker, but the entirety of his friends, family, and villains to have it happen in such a short period of time. That's why here at Smokey's Videos, we subscribe to the high school theory that the entirety of Ultimate Spider-Man, specifically the Peter Parker stuff, because I've actually never read the Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man, takes place over the course of his entire high school career. His freshman year began with the first issue and goes to the late 30s whenever the Venom arc ends. That's the end of his freshman year. It shows how Peter gets his powers. It shows Uncle Ben's death and the tragedies that he faces and the beginning of his hero's journey, and introduces key relationships that last for the entire series. It also ends on a pretty dark, sinister note for this sort of first act. that being the Eddie and Venom stuff. Which means that we are currently in Peter Parker's sophomore year. Right at the tail end, I'd imagine, with everything that's gone down and how everything's been laid out. I see it beginning at the Irresponsible story arc, which has that whole imposter Spider-Man thing and Gwen's dad and the Gwen stuff. And then it continues to the arc, the story, the Hobgoblin one, that I'll be showing off and discussing today. We've seen Peter navigate all of his superheroic responsibilities. He meets Black Cat. Norman Osborn comes back. And there's the whole Ultimate 6 storyline that brings in more of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the wider world, and the Carnage saga. The death of Gwen Stacy happens, and now the emergence of Hobgoblin. Just think that works much better. I'll discuss it a little more at the end of the video. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Anyway, we flash back about a year and a half or so ago to freshman year when Peter was bitten by the Oscorp spider. We see what happened after as the bus drives the students back home. The teacher asks if Peter's okay, and he says he's feeling better aside from the big spider bite on his hand, and asks rhetorically why stuff like this always happens to him. MJ giggles and pushes his glasses up on his nose and says that it's not always. Later that day, she sat out on her stoop doing homework when Harry Osborn rolls up in his car. He jokes that the lawyers sent him here to settle, then asks how Peter is. MJ informs him that Peter is still at the ER with his aunt, and he asks why she didn't go with him. She asks why. He says that he thought that Peter was her boyfriend, especially after all the cuddling they were doing on the bus. She asks how he could tell since he refuses to make eye contact with her in public. And Harry tells her that he didn't mean to make her feel like he doesn't like her. He's just never had a girlfriend before. And then they kiss. That's right. The biggest revelation of this entire comic series is the fact that MJ and Harry secretly, very briefly it seems, dated prior to and at the beginning of the events of the comic run. Now, I still see a fair amount of complaining and criticism regarding the relationships in this book. They're all over the place. The characters go back and forth with who they're with, on and off, on and off, on and off, like a fucking light switch. And to that I ask, where were you during high school, those high school years? Maybe it's not called high school in your country. Maybe it's called secondary school. Whatever. Where were you in those teenage years to not have noticed that exact thing going on? The fact that these kids date and then break up and then get back together and then, again and again and again is perhaps the most realistic aspect of this entire fucking comic. Back in the present, Spider-Man is down for the count at a massive Roxxon lab in downtown New York. He dangles from the massive hands of Killer Shrike. Killer Shrike marches to the scientists and demands that they hand over all the adamantium that they have housed in their safe. They watch him, speechless, and Killer Shrike props up Spidey and threatens to cut him open right there in front of him and spill his guts out on the floor. And one of the scientists tells him to go ahead because they have no relation to Spider-Man and don't know who he is. And Spidey springs into action after playing possum and slams him to the ground, webs his face, and takes him down. Then he asks the scientists what the whole deal about this place is and what the heck adamantium is, and they all look around confused, and Spidey tells these ungrateful weasels to have a great day. Then he swings through the city, across the bridge, and all the way back to Midtown High School, and he arrives late to lunch as the trays are emptied and put away. Then MJ calls out to him, and Peter turns around and finds Harry Osborn. Peter is shocked and asks if he's back visiting or if Harry's back. And Harry charmingly says, he's back, baby. They all head out into the hallway and towards class, and Peter holds MJ back and asks her if Harry said anything to her. She reveals that he actually barely just got there before Peter did, and Peter tells her that this cannot be good, and asks MJ to just stay away from him, at least for now. She asks if this is about Harry's dad, and he asks her to listen to him and believe that if he tells her to stay away from somebody, then he has a pretty good reason to. MJ asks why he's acting like this and being so weird towards Harry. He didn't have anything to do with his dad. And Peter nearly has a breakdown. Oh my god, I'm not talking to you like anything. Every time I ask you to do something, you give me 20 stupid questions. Just don't ask me questions. Just say okay. And every time you don't listen to me, MJ, you get thrown off of a bridge. So could you do me a favor and just do what I say?
I didn't kill Gwen Stacy.
Later that day, Peter arrives at home to find May still packing up, getting ready for the move. She asks if NJ's coming over to help, and he makes up an excuse. May, clearly sensing that something is amiss, tells him to head on in and start packing his things up, and she'll order a pizza. If I was normal, I'd lock this trunk up and throw it in the river. But I can't, because I can't stop being...
Where do you think you're going?
You guys are moving away? I just got back and you're moving away? We got a new house a couple blocks away. You know, it's no big whoop.
Why?
Well, first my Uncle Ben died, and then there's this girl.
Gwen Stacy?
Yeah. She died here too. And, you know, Aunt May, she doesn't want to be here anymore.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
Where have you been, Harry?
Oh, you know, around. I'm joking. They sent me away. I was at some place in Colorado. It was actually pretty nice. And they were just, you know, keeping me away from my supervillain dad till I don't know, it was safe to come out.
So you do remember what happened?
Remember?
What do you want, Harry?
I'm just trying to put things into perspective. I've been thinking about you a lot, Peter. Thinking about our lives. See, there's this, like, funny thing going on with you and me. I don't know if you know it. You got superpowers and became a famous superhero. My life, as I knew it, ends. You get to be Spider-Man. And my dad kills my mom. Every time my father goes nuts, there you are. And then I come back to Queens. And who's dating my girlfriend?
What?
I'm gonna help you. And you're gonna help me. The thing is, Peter, no one understands the crap we've been through. Even if we could tell anyone, no one would understand, because how could they? And that means that there's no one to help us. Because all we have is each other. It's only us, right? Am I right?
Yeah, Harry, yeah.
I'm gonna help you. And you're gonna help me.
Flashback time! Harry stands on the balcony of the Colorado retreat that he was sent to by S.H.I.E.L.D. And he remembers the horrid memories, vaguely more than blurred shapes and distorted voices. The voice of his father, and the voice of Peter. Then Nick Fury shows up and apologizes for keeping him waiting. Fury reveals that it's time for Harry to be sent home. He explains that everything that's happened was because of his father and what he did to himself. But he's, once again, locked away. And now he can't and won't get to Harry. Fury then explains that Harry's grandfather is going to be his guardian now, and they're going to take him back to New York, and Harry will be able to return to school if he wants, although Nick strongly recommends that Harry continue his therapy. And sometime later, Harry arrives at the parking lot of the school and watches Peter and MJ talking to Johnny Storm in the parking lot about Liz. He watches as Peter walks away with MJ, and sometime after that, Harry is in the office of the lawyer handling everything, and his mind flashes awful images of the night his mother died. His mind blinks in and out of reality, and suddenly he's standing with his grandfather at the ruins of Oscorp. His grandfather tells him that Roxxon put in a bid for the lab sites, but Harry absolutely refuses to sell. A few days later, Harry eats pizza for breakfast after his grandfather fell asleep reading the paper, and he receives a call from an unknown number instructing him to head downstairs and meet the mysterious voice outside. Harry follows suit and finds a bald man sitting in his sports car, and Harry remembers the man. He once worked for Norman Osborn. Harry gets in the car and the man, Mr. Shaw, speeds them out of the city and into upstate New York. Wait a minute. Mysterious man, bald, probably has a raspy voice, named Mr. Shaw. Anyway, Shaw arrives at a hidden area located out in the countryside. He leads Harry through the woods and they find a giant bunker entryway buried in the ground. Shaw reveals to Harry that his father was such a control freak that he put his son into hypnotherapy since he was 11 because he didn't want Harry to find out all the terrible things that his father was involved in. Harry flips out and Shaw Winter Soldiers him and says Harry's command words and everything comes rushing back. Harry falls to the ground and Shaw opens the door to his father's bunker, to Harry's bunker. The next day in class, Peter and MJ sit silently ignoring each other. Harry notices this and then watches as MJ starts writing a note to Peter to try and get his attention. But Peter ignores her. So she writes another note and kicks him. The teacher tells her to knock it off and not drag Peter's grades down with her own. Later at the end of school, Peter stands on the edge of the roof when MJ races up after him. She asks why he's mad at her. Peter demands to know when, if ever, she was going to tell him that she was dating Harry before she went out with him. MJ tells her that they weren't even dating, barely going out with how he treated her. And she continues and says that she didn't think it was a big deal. Peter says it wasn't, sure, but the fact that she never told him makes it a big deal. She asks him to please take his mask off and actually talk to her, and then reaches out to grab it herself, but he grabs her wrist in a split second. He pushes her hand back, and she tells him that she doesn't know why she never told him. She just didn't think it was a big deal and didn't want to bring it up and sound stupid and wanted to move on. And Peter shouts that he tells her everything. She asks why he's so mad over stuff that happened over a year ago. And Peter screams that it's because she's going to die. I asked you then, what were you doing at Harry's in the first place?
Peter.
And even after Harry's dad almost kills you, all of that. Harry comes back and you run right to him.
Peter, that's not true. We're just friends. He's your friend too.
You're going to get killed because of all of this, and it's going to be my fault.
No. Peter, please, take off the mask. Peter.
Listen. The Osborns are nuts. Stay away from them. Harry is dangerous. Because I should have never told you who I was. MJ walks out towards the parking lot and Harry stops her. He asks if she's okay and where Peter went. MJ asks what Harry told Peter about them. And he says he figured that she already told him. He holds her by the shoulders and apologizes deeply for screwing up the relationship because she and Peter are just so cool together. MJ starts to tear up and says that she thinks Peter has just broken up with her. And Harry tells her that he's not the same guy. MJ retorts that he can't be after everything he's gone through. And Harry says that it doesn't mean he has to take it out on her. But MJ comes back and says that he has a right to be upset about what Harry told him, and that it should have come from her. And Harry expertly leads the conversation by saying, "Why? He doesn't tell you everything?"
Yes, he does.
No, I don't think he does. Do you know he killed my dad?
Later in the city, armed thugs hold up a hot dog vendor at gunpoint as they extort him for money. Then Spider-Man appears and fucking destroys him. He realizes that he went a little too far and rushes the guy to the hospital and waits for the police outside. Later, Captain Gene DeWolf arrives. Longtime Spider-Man fans, webheads, will know that name as the cop who died. Spider-Man tells her that he's given himself up for putting someone in the hospital and losing his control, and Jean reintroduces herself because they previously met when the Gladiator attacked a museum. She tells him to calm the hell down because the vendor attested that Spider-Man saved his life, and the guy only has a sprained arm. But Spidey demands that they arrest him because he lost control. The papers even say so. He's a threat and a menace. Jean laughs it off and tells him to calm his ass down. Then she gives him a card and says that if he ever needs something that doesn't involve a teenage nervous breakdown, he should get in touch. Later that night, Peter arrives at their new home, and Mary informs him that MJ stopped by that day and said that she and Peter had a big fight. MJ told May that it was her fault, and May asks Peter if that was true. Peter tells her that he's not sure. She gives her nephew a hug. Flashback time! Mr. Shaw leads Harry into Norman's bunker. It's full of technology, a bed, piles of cash, as well as a set of Doc Ock's tentacles, 3 different goblin masks, and this big robotic version of himself. What is that? Why did he make that? It's literally a robot version of him as the goblin monster. When did he have time to make that? Who did he commission to make an animatronic of himself? Anyway, Shaw leads Harry to the cryo storage that contains all of the Oz formula, and Harry freaks the fuck out and races out of the bunker. Shaw tackles him and demands that Harry calm down. Harry freaks out that his father is a monster who killed his mother, and Shaw says his command word, and Harry once again passes out. He wakes up later in the middle of the night of his living room to find Shaw standing around waiting for him, and Shaw asks him what they're going to do about finding Norman, and then instructs him that they both know who knows where Norman is. A few days later at school, Peter marches inside past MJ and Liz, and in class he remains silent and despondent. Then later at lunch, Peter sits out on the bleachers alone when MJ walks up to where he's seated. She tells him that she went all the way to the fucking gym roof looking for him, and then she apologizes to Peter, and he sits there silently until she yells it in his ear like he's deaf, and Peter can't help but smile. She sits down next to him and asks why, if she is so into Harry Osborn, she isn't with him, and is instead out here on the bleachers after she climbed up to the gym roof and climbed all the way back down with Peter. Peter chimes in that he's not sure if she ever knows what she wants. Not a good idea. And MJ asks what the hell is wrong with him, because this clearly isn't just from Harry. It's something that's been building up well before Harry got back, possibly even before Gwen died. Like when he never showed up to that big fancy dinner they were supposed to have. Peter tells her that she's just not safe with him, and she retorts that she lives in Queens, and she's not safe, period. Then she asks if it's about Harry's dad. And Peter asks what exactly she means by that, and MJ tells him that she now knows how their fight ended, and asks for some reassurance that Peter actually did kill him in self-defense and not on purpose, and Peter explodes. Mostly because Norman Osborn isn't dead. MJ wonders why Harry would say something like that, and Peter assures her it's because he's fucking crazy. I will say this. It is a bit annoying going back and rereading this whole section of the comic, you know, the end of sophomore year. Specifically coming from MJ in this story arc. I'm not gonna lay that against either Bendis or her as a character and a person that exists in this 2D world that we're reading. Because while it is obnoxious and annoying to us, people who know everything that's gonna happen, that's like happening to them, I do think it's a very realistic outcome, especially when she's relatively in the dark compared to all this. Like, I don't think there's ever any outcome or fallout from when Peter really gets kidnapped by Norman and is taken, you know, to Washington, D.C. to attempt a coup. He should have just gotten elected. But I don't think that, like, they ever really talk about it, especially in the mainstream series. So Peter just sort of keeps that boiled up. And like, you know, on top of everything else that she just doesn't know, because, I don't know, he might not tell her, or she just is unaware of all these things that he's gone through while she's not around. But I do think that, for the most part, she's actually coming from a very realistic point of view. It's a realistic outcome. She liked Harry before all this. Almost 2 years ago. They dated for a bit. They were friends. They had their friend group that we see at the beginning of the series. Maybe they weren't that close, but they were still friendly enough to, you know, flirt and date. Sure, his dad's a lunatic, but everybody knew that before when he was just an asshole businessman. But she has no true way of knowing what Harry knows. But she just has no way of knowing what Harry truly knows without Peter telling her. Like, Harry isn't gonna fucking go and say, like, yeah, S.H.I.E.L.D. took me out of my Colorado retreat where I was getting therapy sessions about my insane dad and flew me to Washington, D.C. to try to get him to stop, and then he fucking tried to kill me. Peter and MJ's relationship at this point, it's been pretty rocky recently. And that's not even mentioning all the crazy shit that's happened in their personal lives, with, Peter being a superhero and having to deal with villains. But Harry's sudden return brings her life back to that sense of normalcy that she once had almost a year and a half ago when they were freshmen. Whether she admits it or not, she desperately wants that back. It helps Mary Jane almost gaslight herself into believing that things can be like they once were. Only now Peter's Spider-Man. Oh, we can all be friends again. Harry's back. Let's hang out. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, you're Spider-Man. That's great. That's what she wants. Whether she knows it or not, or admits it or not. She just wants that normalcy, that sense that everything's going to be okay. I don't have to worry about these things. It's a very human hope. And it's very much a teenage approach to reality to have this pseudo-substitution for what's really happening. So while it is obnoxious to read, just as like a fan, be like, you're invested in this and you're like, oh my God, MJ, why can't you see what Peter sees? If we look at these people, these characters as actual people, then I think it really does work. And it's a fantastic element by Bendis, who just kind of gets how people act. He's a good writer. Anyway, Peter runs off, and later that night he arrives at Harry's penthouse where he finds Harry arguing with Mr. Shaw. Harry starts freaking out, and Shaw grabs him and demands that Harry remember who he really is. Then Harry bursts into flames and transforms into the Hobgoblin. Oh yeah, and also Mr. Shaw is a figment of Harry's imagination, in case you were unaware. He's like a hallucination that's implanted somehow from the hypnotherapy that Norman put him under. Peter panics and unloads his webbing onto the Hobgoblin and punches him into his thick, leathery abomination-looking head. They smash through the penthouse and onto the balcony, and Hobgoblin launches him into a neighboring building. Peter plummets to the streets below and smashes into the ground, and Hobgoblin plunges himself down to the streets. Peter tries to remind himself that Harry isn't a villain. He's his friend who has had something horrible happen to him, and he needs to get him away from the people and the citizens and help him. Then Hobgoblin picks up a cab and smashes it at him, but Spidey leaps out of the way, slams his fist into the back of Hobgoblin's skull and flips over. And Hobgoblin launches blades of fire out of his fucking hands. Peter lands at the base of the penthouse building and pleads with Harry Hobgoblin to stop. He launches more fire blades at Spidey as he leaps away. Hobgoblin looks around as the hallucinatory henchman orders him to kill Peter Parker. And meanwhile, a couple of blocks away, MJ exits the subway to find a fleeing crowd. She turns and watches as a cab explodes down the street. She races through the crowd and rounds the corner to find Peter fighting a new goblin. Hobgoblin pulverizes Spider-Man into a car, and MJ cries out, causing the Hobgoblin to crane its horrid neck and find her. And Mr. Shaw tells him that she's the one that'll do it. Hobgoblin leaps towards her. MJ's frozen in place as the creature lunges for her frame, and then Peter connects a web to the creature's back, slams the Hobgoblin into the pavement with all of his might. He leaps out, grabs MJ, and they swing away from the ruins. Peter lands on a rooftop and demands to know why she's here. She tells him that she came to confront Harry about everything that's going on. Peter loses it and orders her to get the fuck out of here as he smashes open the stairwell door. Listen to me, no matter what. Go inside the building and hide. Wait until I get him away from here and then run home. That thing, it's Harry.
Peter.
Just listen to me. Get out of here. Go. Go. Stay down! Why? Why is this happening? Why? 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 Why?
Do what? Do what? Kill me.
Harry, I'm your friend. We've been friends since we were little. I had no idea this happened to you. Please let me help you.
He's not going to do it. I told you only your father can end this. Get your father.
Harry, I promise. Just come on, take my hand. I promise I'll help you.
Harold!
Harry, no! Spider-Man swings down and launches Hobgoblin back down the street, and after he lands, Shaw lifts his head and tells him where they need to go. Cut to the Triskelion. Iron Man takes off after a meeting with Nick Fury, who's in the midst of an interview regarding the Ultimates, when he is alerted to the current situation. Fury cancels the interview and is joined by Agent Jimmy Woo. Woo tells him that they never found any form of molecular distortion or mutation in Harry Osborn, and they have no idea how the fuck this happened. Fury leads S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in suiting up, and they ready to deploy. Meanwhile, Spider-Man desperately tries and fails to stop Hobgoblin from his rampage towards the Triskelion. Then Fury and the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, who are trained in using equipment that was originally meant for the Hulk, arrive and fucking unload on him. Spidey leaps in front of the downed Hobgoblin and begs them to stop. Fury arrives, flies right up to his face, and tells Peter to stand down, because this is not the best move to make right now. Then Hobgoblin rockets up and launches Peter away, and Fury orders his agents to put it down. Peter lies in a nearby ruin, too weak, too strained, too exhausted to pick himself up. He crawls over the wreckage caused by his friend, crying out for them to stop. The Hobgoblin shrieks out in a horrible, unhuman voice to kill him, demanding that they kill him. He continues marching towards Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. until finally the creature collapses and shifts back into the ruined body of Harry Osborn. Peter gets to his feet and races at them as Fury and his agents land and set up a perimeter. Why did this happen? What happened? Why did you do this? Why did you let this happen? He was just a kid. And you were supposed to take care of him, and look, why was he begging me to kill him?
Agent Wu, we need to quarantine Osborn's penthouse. Whole building. Talk with federal and local. Tell them what happened. Let's actually cooperate with... Ceasefire! Ceasefire! Go home, kid. Go. Is he breathing?
Yes, sir.
Let's keep it that way. I want the secret of the Oz formula cracked by my birthday. Get everyone on it. Osborn wasn't that smart. I want the secret and no more surprises.
Yes, sir.
And then, I think it's time for Peter Parker to say goodbye to those spider powers.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I ran home. I was so freaking scared. Can I hug you? Peter, I didn't know. I had no idea Harry was like that.
I told you to stay away from him. I told you to trust me.
You didn't tell me everything. How could I know?
I didn't know everything. I just knew. I knew that there was trouble. That's all that I knew. I didn't know it was going to be that bad, and I begged you to stay away from Harry, and you ignored me. You did the opposite of what I told you to do. And you lied to me after all that we've been through, after all the people You're going to get killed. This isn't a game. I can't protect you because you don't listen to me. I can't have you in my life. I can't have friends and I can't have you because you'll end up dead. And I can't be responsible for it because I can't trust you. I can't. And I can't. A month and a half later, MJ sits in one of the bathroom stalls, and Liz shows up and finds her, and she asks if Mary is okay, because she's been in there quite a while. And Liz asks if this is about Peter still. And MJ tells her that she is fine and that she is over it. And then she breaks into an uncontrollable sobbing. Later in their English class, their teacher gets angry that the kids didn't even bother to watch the movie adaptation of the book they're covering. As he berates Kenny Kong, Peter and MJ exchange a glance and then quickly turn away from each other. Then Peter stands up, grabs his books, and leaves. The teacher demands that he sit back down, or else, and Peter asks him what he's gonna do. Flunk him? Because Peter could teach this class, and they all know it. And everyone laughs, and he leaves the room. After school at the mall, MJ and Liz sit together in the food court. MJ zones out, completely missing everything Liz has been saying, and she asks if they can leave. Liz asks what the hell is so important about Peter Parker that she's still upset about it. MJ tells her that she just has homework to do, and she can't really relax because she works here. Then who should walk up but Flash Thompson? He explains that a senior he's friends with named Mark Raxton, who has a band, has a thing for MJ. So Flash took it upon himself to come over and introduce him. MJ says that she's not interested as Mark walks up and pushes Flash aside and apologizes to the girls. Mark charismatically demands that Flash return to his seat and stop talking. He apologizes once again to MJ and offers her some fries to make it up to him. Liz asks what kind of band they're in. Mark explains that they're a punk band and makes a dig at the Ramones and explains that they're actually playing a gig tomorrow night. Liz then informs Mark that MJ actually just had a nasty breakup and she needs a distraction from the heartbreak, meaning that this is perfect timing. Mark knows who Peter is, and MJ asks that he not poke fun at him. Mark says that he has nothing against the guy. So Flash and the rest of the basketball team get ready to leave, which Mark is also a part of, and inform him that they need to go to practice. Flash hands over his guitar case, and Mark invites the girls to the show tomorrow night at 8 p.m. The boys all leave, and Liz starts singing that the punk rock cutie likes redheads. Saturday night arrives, and MJ and Liz are joined by Kong at the club where Mark's band sing their hit song, Molten Man. Kong digs it, but MJ doesn't really like the hard rock and punk crowd. Eventually, the show ends and the girls head out with Kong, who is wearing a Punisher t-shirt. Liz and MJ talk about how much fun they had when Mark and the band walk through the exit side doors. He spots them and heads over and asks what they thought, and says that he's really glad that MJ came. Then he offers her a ride home. Liz drags Kong away, and he realizes the real reason he was invited. It was to give Liz a lift home after this happened. And MJ and Mark hang out on the sidewalk a little while longer talking. Later that night, Mark pulls up to MJ's house and she tells him how great he was on the guitar and that he's really talented. Then Mark just suddenly brings up Will Eisner and how he created the graphic novel as a concept. He equates this feat in comic history being, something that no one has ever created before, and that's what Mark wants his music to do. MJ says that she used to want to be an actor, then decided that she hated the idea and decided to go into teaching, to be a good teacher, to be one that cares, because the world needs teachers, and she wants to help people. And then she realizes that she's never told anyone that before. Mark asks why she told him that. And MJ says that she's not sure, and she thinks it's because they're kind of having a moment. And Mark smiles and puts his hand to her cheek. And then he kisses her. And a few seconds later, MJ bounces back and Mark immediately apologizes. They sit there briefly before he asks how she and Peter broke up. MJ explains that he actually broke up with her, but the more and more that she's been thinking about it, she thinks that he might have been right to do so. It just took her a while to see it, to see that she needed to grow up, to be more than she has been, to stop making the same excuses and the same mistakes over and over again, because she loves him. She loves him so much that she can't even find a way to properly express it. But now he hates her, but she still can't stop loving him. She continues her soliloquy by explaining that she is going to earn him back, as a friend, if nothing else, because she cares about him, and she knows he truly does care about her. Mark asks what makes Peter Parker so special, and MJ tells him everything. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Leave any recommendations for future Ultimate Era videos as well. Any specific arcs, storylines, comics that I should be, perusing and covering soon. I don't know. I think that this was a great end. Can we talk about Harry Osborn real quick before I forget? So when exactly does he become the Hobgoblin? When does he get the Oz formula? Because for some reason, I realized when I was going through and doing the script and getting ready for the video, I had always thought that it was like around the time, if not a little bit before Norman got it. So, you know, about a year and a half ago. But looking back on it now, I realize how stupid that is, because he absolutely took the formula in the time between when he leaves the Colorado resort, Shaw starts manifesting, and he finds Norman's bunker. Like, he uses it on himself then, right? Because that's still a flashback. That's happening before he shows back up to the school. So God knows when the fuck that's actually happening. But is the bunker even real? Because Harry's command word for his hypnotherapy is cellar door. So is every single thing that we see involving Shaw and Harry with the whole bunker stuff, is that all fake? Did Harry become the Hobgoblin with the Oz formula way before this? And I think that the moment, like, they show it, the fucking full-on panel Oz formula, and Harry freaks out. And I always thought that was like, he's remembering when his father forcefully, like, injected him and tested it on him, and, like, he's had it for this whole comic series thus far. He just, you know, forgot or didn't know about it or whatever was going on with his head. I don't know. I don't think it's ever explained how or when he gets the juice. Unless I've just totally missed something. Let me know in the comments, of course, if, you know, you have any ideas. It's a great arc. I always really like this one. I do really dig the ultimate versions of the goblins. They're neat. And I do think that this is a great end to another era of Ultimate Spider-Man. Like I said at the beginning, in my headcanon, this is the final act of Peter's sophomore year. This is probably happening sometime, I don't know, in April to May, you know, around the end of the American school year. So this is kind of going into the summer. I can't remember if there are any like crossovers or team up issues that sort of occur between like around this time that were released. I'd have to look over and try and figure that out. Find someone online I'm sure has made a list. But hey, you could probably say that those happened over the summer, especially if MJ is not a part of it. But there's going to be time between these two story arcs. That's what the whole thing covering with MJ is. That's sort of a breather in between the story arcs. Because after this, Kingpin's coming back, Silver Sable, Deadpool, Kitty Pryde, clones, the works. Shit's gonna get crazy. Peter's junior year of high school. And another aspect that I think really helps convey that there's a sense of time passing is that we're getting closer to the end of Bagley's time on Ultimate Spider-Man. And that art shift, for the most part, I think works very well in showing how the characters have grown, how they have developed and changed since we first saw them. Like Kong, he gets a whole new redesign when a new artist comes on. I can't remember which artist it is, but it happens. And I really like that. That's just a great sort of like, they're moving on, they're progressing as individuals, and let's change the art, you know. I don't know, I can't remember the reason why Mark Bagley stopped working on it, but I'm okay with it. Like, you know, I love Mark Bagley's art on this series. Fantastic. Over 100 issues, I think, is what he did. There's just something magical about the idea of like, well, this is the art from this time period of this character's life, and let's, you know, see the evolution and how they change with this artist, in this artist. Because there's 3-ish other artists that come on. Stuart Immonen, Sarah Pichelli, and I think there's a third, but he's not in it as much. I think he's the basketball-headed Peter Parker. That comes in pretty later on. But that art shift, to me, for the most part, I think it just works very well, showing how the characters develop and everything and change. I think Flash is probably the biggest instance of it. Something I really like about Flash Thompson in the Ultimate Universe is that he starts out kind of like a, you know, schlocky loser hanging out with Kong, and then their characters develop and change. Kong splits up from Flash. He's no longer his crony, especially by now, which is so cool to see, because it's like, oh, freshman year, they're buddy-buddy, being bullies, hanging out. Kong grows as a person. Flash, for the most part, doesn't, and finds other people who he is more alike, and so he splits from the group. We don't see as much of Flash Thompson anymore, but we do see a lot of Kenny, Kitty Pryde, Liz, MJ, Peter, the group, the core group. but Flash still occasionally pops up, like now. Flash is, I don't know what basketball it would be. Like you're gonna tell me a freshman is on the same basketball team as a fucking senior? I don't know how it works. That could be a thing, but I don't like it. But as we continue going, we see less and less of Flash and more of the other characters coming into the mix and growing and changing. And that's just something that happens in high school. And that's such a cool, realistic, lifelike element that just brings so much character and so much life to the series. I fucking love Ultimate Spider-Man. But let me know what your thoughts are of Ultimate Spider-Man. Let me know what your thoughts are on my thoughts of how the Ultimate Spider-Man timeline should be laid out. As always, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos, Etsy, BlakeTWild.etsy.com. Come by AZCAF, Arizona Comic Arts Festival, on March 22nd at the Arizona Shrine Auditorium. Check out my podcast, the Comic Shtick Podcast, where I discuss comics, movies, pop culture, whatever sort of interests me at that time. And I Need Some Disney, where I sit alongside my wife and we discuss all things Disney. She was a Disney kid, I was not. It's a great dynamic. And of course, leave suggestions for future comics in the comments below. Which Ultimate story arcs should I be covering? And I'll see you next time. Bye!